Today we've got tinnitus. Now, is it caused by modafinil, phenibut? We're going to explore those two substances, but the main focus is on modafinil. There's been studies on it, and there have been reports of people experiencing it due to this. Now, tinnitus is one of those things where you hear sounds, and at first it's almost like it's from the external experiences out there, but then you realize, wait, it's all in my head. And it varies. It's different sounds at different pitches. I mean, it's one of the most difficult experiences to describe because doctors don't really know how to fix it. It varies based on each individual, and it's kind of a scary thing to discuss. But we're here to discuss side effects with substances, and this is definitely one of them. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so we are on Reddit, modafinil and tinnitus. Does anybody know much about this? When I first took it, it was around 100 milligrams, which is half of this. And let me start the video by saying that all substances shown in this video are legal, at least in my country. So depending on where you live in the world, it may be prescription, it may be OTC, but regardless, YouTube, haha. Okay, so modafinil is definitely a trigger for tinnitus for some people. And the other substance that I've talked about quite a bit is phenibut. Phenibut is a GABA agonist that helps with tinnitus, but it can also cause tinnitus. It gets a little funky at a certain point, but this is basically depending on who you are, how you're constructed, and what doses you're taking alongside your diet, right? Because there's so many different factors where truthfully at the end of the day, doctors don't really know how to cure tinnitus. There's so many different reasons. I'm sure there will be one day a solid cure, a solid medicine for it, but currently a lot of doctors are saying, hey, just take a clonazepam or any benzodiazepine such as Xanax, and here you go, you won't be hearing it. Which technically works, but it doesn't fully solve the problem. It just calms you down. Tinnitus is also associated heavily with anxiety and just general stress, high cortisol levels. So I felt a very slight ringing sensation in both my ears that came on in about an hour of taking it and was more or less the same until the next day. And then we have another response. Yes, I've had the same experience, blah, blah, blah. Possibly it's glutamate related. So what we're going to do now is go to this. Tinnitus is defined as the perception of sound in the absence of an external source. It is typically described by those who experience it as ringing, hissing, buzzing, or a whooshing sound, and is thought to result from abnormal neural activity at some point or points in the auditory pathway. So it's interpreted by the brain as sound. Tinnitus can be either objective or subjective. Most commonly, tinnitus is subjective. The sound is only heard by the person experiencing it. Subjective tinnitus affects 10% of the general population, which increases to as much as 30% of the population over the age of 50. It can be experienced acutely, recovering spontaneously within minutes to weeks. I personally experienced it many, many times. It started really over the past year, and I've been taking phenibut for the past couple of years. I've tried modafinil, I think, when was it, 3 years ago or whatever. So it's not like it suddenly came on and, oh, there we go, I knew it was it. The first time I really remember hearing it was when I mixed modafinil with alcohol, but there's so many reasons. First of all, you shouldn't do that, but there's so many other reasons why that could have happened. High stress levels due to financial relations. Also, I've taken a lot of supplements and substances over the years. Anything from psychedelics to dissociatives to medical marijuana. There is quite a bit that we could go off of here, but enough about that. In approximately 90% of the cases, chronic tinnitus is comorbid with some degree of hearing loss. So it can confound into disabling effects. It's a little bit saddening for the elderly. It gets a little bit worse, but I'm sure there's going to be a solution as doctors are trying to understand it a little bit better. So now we are on a forum, tinnitustalk.com. By the way, let me know down below if you have experienced tinnitus from taking modafinil, from taking Phenibut, or from taking any other substances. Now, the common ones that this happens with is generally stimulants, but that's also associated with kind of psychosis state, right? So if you are sleep deprived, that is also another great example of why your diet and the way you function in your life can affect tinnitus, because your anxiety and stress levels rise like crazy when you get 2 hours of sleep, or you don't sleep at all for 48 hours. You're just working hardcore. Everybody's calling you. You lose your train of thought. It gets worse than if you were to just get drunk. You lose your motor skills, everything just goes haywire, right? And then on top of that, if you decide, hey, after a 48-hour binge, let me just pop a modafinil, of course, no wonder there's going to be some bad side effects. So Carl over here is from Chicago. Woo! Shout out to Chicago. When a neuron fires, the pocket of chemicals is released and the chemicals are binded on the dendrite end of the next neuron. Glutamate and GABA are chemicals that play a key role in this process. They are the main two that we are going to be discussing. One excites the neurons, and that is glutamate, which is most likely because of tinnitus from scientists' current understanding, while the other inhibits neurons, and that is GABA, where Xanax, alprazolam, is a GABA A agonist. Phenibut is a GABA B agonist. So one excites, one inhibits. And Phenibut, the inhibitor, since it is a GABA B agonist, is most likely going to help with tinnitus if you're experiencing it from other substances. Now, it is a better option in my personal opinion. I mean, you could probably ask your doctor what he thinks about it, but just from the research I've done, both personally, from external experiences, other people, facts, Xanax has more addictive qualities than Phenibut itself, but both generally help. Now, the problem is, whenever you take anything, a substance whatsoever of any kind, it can be an orange even, you're going to feel great, your body's going to feel energized, but there's always a come down, right? So let's say you have an awesome week without tinnitus, it's been going on for many weeks and you're so happy to get rid of it. Well, now I'm going to reduce the screen a little bit. Now I want to make sure that this process is going on and I never have tinnitus again. Great. So let me just take a higher dose of Phenibut this time. And that's how tolerance increases. That's where you go off. Some people experience withdrawals when they stop taking it. And if you take a substance irresponsibly, this is where, in certain cases, Phenibut, the GABA agonist, can cause tinnitus as well, because suddenly you're withdrawing from it and it would have been better not taking anything in the first place. It would be great to find a drug that targets just the nerves that are causing tinnitus. The trick is finding a drug that will be selectively absorbed by just those efferent nerves that are too excited. Benzos like clonazepam and Xanax seem to calm down those nerves. However, they calm down a whole lot of other nerves in the process, which technically, sure, if you have really bad tinnitus, can help you focus with work and school again, but if you take too high a dose of Xanax, you're going to fall asleep. For those of us who take anti-anxiety drugs, let's not get confused that we're taking them for anxiety. We're taking them to calm the nerves that cause tinnitus. All right, so now we're on tinnitusformula.com. So he describes how to combat anxiety through proper supplement support of brain neurotransmitters, which GABA is the most commonplace neurotransmitter in the body. It helps with sleep and remaining calm, anxiety, all that stuff. This is a rather long read, so I'm going to just have the links down in the description below, because it goes through some nutritional support factors. So, for example, with GABA, obviously you'd like to take GABA. L-theanine, it is great for reducing anxiety. I think it has something to do with green tea or something like that. Taurine, vitamin B6, zinc. While for glutamate, some supplements are taurine, NAC, green tea, vitamin D3, magnesium, and the omega-3s, fish oil. And he basically goes on and talks a little bit about the certain medications that help, but then the brain gets receptive to them and it just stops working because it loses its effectiveness. So that is partially treatment. But then another way to treat it is to create what is missing in the brain and what's needed. When the brain produces a neurotransmitter, it starts with the raw material, which is usually an amino acid. Enzymes, along with various cofactors such as B vitamins, then convert the amino acid to the brain chemical required. So if you take therapeutic supplements, it can help promote the individual neurotransmitters. Here is another post, this time on Neurotropics. This guy is reporting that he has bad tinnitus from taking Phenibut, and that is due to the fact that he was using it on a daily basis for long term, 12 months. We don't know how much, but it seems like he's been abusing it. He was experiencing incredibly loud, fluctuating bilateral tinnitus, particularly during the withdrawal phase. And then he also mixed it with dexamphetamine, and when you start mixing that, it gets a little out of hand. With my personal experience, I think modafinil, this is 200 milligrams, it was causing definitely the tinnitus in the worst case, while Phenibut was maybe possibly causing tinnitus if I was abusing it. But the end message of this video is you need a proper diet. If something's missing from your diet, you need to supplement it. You need to get plenty of sleep whenever you're taking a substance. I did make a video in the past that was recommending you take modafinil and Phenibut together. Of course, you have to study and research what the effects of it are, though. So for example, taking that every single day probably would be a really bad idea. Now, if let's say there is a case scenario where you need to get a lot of work done, you have a lot of anxiety, taking it once on a weekend isn't really going to cause so much harm. Now, with modafinil for the daily users, 200 milligrams, this has a very long half-life of 12 hours. So what people have discovered is over a course of 4 days, if you have more than 300 milligrams in your system, this is where tinnitus is most likely going to occur. So what I did to combat my tinnitus, if I was taking, let's say, modafinil 2 days in a row, is I just split it in half, and boom, I was taking 100, there we go. My tolerance wasn't so bad. I'm saving a penny every day or whatever. It's pretty cheap. I haven't taken any benzodiazepines. Sometimes I take Phenibut to help with the tinnitus, but it is a rare occurrence now. So really did go in with the fact that I was getting very little sleep. I started sleeping more. I started eating better. Also, you don't want to be mixing it with other substances like amphetamine, methamphetamine, cocaine, stimulants. Those are the really bad ones. They did do a study here on clinicaltrials.gov, but it was terminated. This was going for modafinil, whether it does cause tinnitus. Terminated early due to a lack of change in primary and secondary outcome measures. So the main test was taking modafinil 200 milligrams every single day for 14 days. But so far there is some research stating support for the fact that tinnitus might be agitated definitely by modafinil. There is another link, and this is the last one we're going to be talking about. High glutamate levels and low GABA levels have been shown to play a role in tinnitus. So if you're taking a lot of modafinil and a lot of Phenibut, and then you go through withdrawals, this is a perfect way, in combination with a very bad diet, no sleep, to experience great tinnitus. Now, my longest period was the first time I got really freaked out because I didn't know what it was. It was like, by the way, I've noticed that I really hyper-focused when I also started smoking weed on top of modafinil, and then you really like go, oh my god, what am I hearing? You get like paranoid, the anxiety goes up, and of course if you try and focus in on tinnitus, it just starts ringing even louder. For some people, they start hearing like whistles and just weird sounds. It's different than hearing voices, but it isn't too far away from that either. This study showed that in rats, drugs that increase GABA levels eliminated tinnitus signatures in the brain. Unfortunately, the drugs they used have serious side effects. So if you go to the study, it's going to be there. Again, all links are down in the description below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Sorry if it got a little bit boring for some of y'all, but that is that. I mean, my tinnitus, again, for the most part, it's not cured. There's still nights where even without taking substances, I just hear stuff, right? But those are the side effects from substances. Now, there's people out there who are going to be like, oh, just don't take drugs. Well, most people end up taking drugs anyways because your doctor's probably going to prescribe something to you over the course of your life. So the more educated you are in substances, the better you'll be. My name is Mike, or Avi. Thanks so much for watching today. That is that. Have a wonderful rest of your day.